I think I'm growing way more unique seed varieties this fall than I did like even in the spring. So I've got stuff that I'm planting right now that you would never find in a grocery store, and honestly it's kind of hard to find even like in a farmer's market. So I thought today I would show you the most interesting seed starts that you can do for fall, and we'll also talk about some seed starting tips. I feel like I can't even say this as a gardener, but seed starting is not my favorite thing about gardening. In fact, it's probably one of my least favorite things to do in the garden, but it does have its own set of pros and cons. And if you're trying to grow unique seeds that you wouldn't be able to get, especially this time of year, I feel like in New England, all the nurseries around here completely dropped the ball. And all I've been able to find is kale, lettuce, some cabbages, and broccoli. And when I say broccoli, I mean that's all it says on it. It doesn't tell you the variety. It's like the most basic broccoli that you can get, which is fine. But if I'm gonna start seeds, and this time of year we do have to, I wanna start seeds that are exciting to me and stuff that I really wanna grow. I do have several different seeds that we're gonna talk about today, and I'll just give you some tips that make seed starting a little bit easier, because for me, it's a big energy expenditure, right? So if you've got chronic pain or some kind of chronic fatigue going on, or just limited time, like you don't have the time to do all this labor, we wanna maximize the time that we're spending on this project. It's also really great to start seeds if you are trying to succession sow. Like this time of year, I'm trying to grow a lot of fast growing crops, and I want to have more ready to go out in the garden as soon as the ones that are there are done, because that space is already taken up. Even though a lot of these things maybe could be direct sown in the garden, they can't be if you've got limited space and you're succession sowing. So that's another big reason that we need to get our seeds started inside, either just under some kind of grow light or in a greenhouse. Seed starting is also way cheaper. It's just a lot more affordable. Even when you factor in having to get seed starting supplies, you should be only buying those once. You should be buying stuff that really lasts. And I have a couple recommendations for brands that I really like that I've tested. Really only 2 that I've tested have passed my kind of quality standards, and this is one of them, which we'll talk about in a minute. This video is sponsored by Bootstrap Farmer today. There is that upfront cost of things, and then it really is just a matter of buying a $3 pack of seeds, which you could then seed save and not have to even do that anymore. So I think it's worth it to kind of give yourself a good foundation to start from. Give yourself stuff that you know is gonna last and that's gonna make the job easier, because if this is something that you don't necessarily love doing, like me, you want stuff that's going to make that job go by faster, and you'll have less issues with your starts. I'm not starting all of these now, but I like to have the color-coded stuff set up, because the color coding helps me keep track of my succession sowings. But so those are the 6 cells, and then I've also got this thing, which I've never seen anything like this before, that holds our larger pot size. So first tip for seed starting, you definitely want to use an actual seed starting mix. I get asked all the time, what is the difference? The seed starting mix has a much more complex, I don't want to say complex, but specific type of fertilizer in it. This fertilizer is meant to be a slow release over time so that your little seedlings get what they need, because they have the fertilizer that they need baked into each seed casing, essentially, to get them germinated and growing. But once they start getting true leaves on them, you need something that has a fertilizer in it already. It's also super lightweight, so we don't want those seeds fighting any harder than they have to grow. And if we can help them out by using a really lightweight mix, that makes it so that the seeds don't have to push through and be super strong in order to actually germinate. So you'll notice I like to kind of batch things, I'll do 4 at a time, and we want to pre-hydrate the soil so that the seeds don't get disturbed, because it is kind of hydrophobic when it first comes out of the container. So you need to kind of do a little, let it soak in, do a little bit more. One thing that I've noticed in dealing with a lot of different brands and in the content creation space in general when it comes to gardening, it's kind of weird. The gardening space is very dominated by women overall. Of course, there's going to be gardeners of all genders, but overall, it's a very female-dominated space. So it's always been so weird to me that they're not taking that into consideration when they're building tools and things like that. So one of the reasons I was really excited to partner with Bootstrap Farmer was because as soon as we got on the call, they were like, we are run by women who also have their own farms that are farmers, and they also have like these amazing like hoop house structures, kind of like a really big different scale of the hoop house that I built. And they're actually testing those to make sure that people with smaller frames can assemble them and try to address any issues with the assembly process to make it easier. Okay, looks like we got some good moisture going here. Like really think about like lawn tools, like how heavy and long like a weed whacker is generally made to be. And yeah, you can get a battery operated one, but it's not, the performance is not the same, the battery life is not the same. It's frustrating to me to be dealing with that, where like not only just having chronic pain and fatigue, but being someone with a smaller frame who's maybe not necessarily as strong as these tools are designed for, like we need to be adapting. So I really like to find companies that are thinking about that and thinking about accessibility in general. Like this is a huge part of my life, it's a huge part of what I talk to you guys about. So it's very important that the companies that I decide to share with you also share those values. Let's talk about our first unique seed. This is going to be the Beauregarde Snow Pea from row 7. This is a snap pea, but it's purple. Now there's other purple snap peas that you can get from like botanical interests and stuff, but row 7, they partner with chefs and they're trying to find varieties that cook a certain way, and they really wanted to come up with a burgundy snap pea that stayed purple when you cooked it. So a lot of the times the chemical interaction that's happening when heat is applied to any purple vegetable, this happens with a lot of different purple vegetables, including purple green beans. They look great on the plant, you bring them inside, you put them in a pan, and they just immediately turn green as soon as the heat touches them. That's not the case with the Beauregarde. I like how row 7 also gives you kind of cooking instructions along with the growing instructions. Like they're very much focused on the whole experience from garden to plate. So with a snow pea, you can direct sow it. It's recommended direct sowing it, but I've been just kind of starting them in trays to have a second succession going. Whether you're direct sowing them or putting them into seed cells like these 6 cells, you do get faster germination if you pre-soak the seeds for about 24 hours before you plant them. I'm not doing that this time because I already have a succession going in the garden. I'm not in a huge rush for these to actually take off. They are bigger seeds. We do need to plant them a little bit deeper as a result. So I just kind of started my indent with the dibber, and then I'm going to push them down a little bit further. I love a dibber like this. The wooden handle is much more comfortable for me with my arthritis and my kind of hand weakness that I get. I like how it like fits the ball in my hand when I'm doing like big heavy tasks. But even for something like this, like yeah, I could just kind of poke it with my finger, but I like to do it like this. It's more comfortable for me. I also know for a fact that a lot of you find seed starting very intimidating. And I get that because like if you mess it up, sometimes you don't get a second chance, and it's like hard to know what to look for to know if something is doing well. If you get something like this Ultimate Backyard Gardener's Kit, it kind of takes a lot of the guesswork out of it for you, so you can start off from a place of like being empowered to just get seeds in and get started growing without having to kind of be like, oh my god, what's a 10-20 tray? Do I need 6 cells, or should I get the 3-inch pots? Like you shouldn't have to kind of freak out and like worry about that stuff. And one of the taglines that I put in my Instagram bio and all my bios on the internet is I say I'm helping you crush your garden fears, because I do feel like a lot of the messages that I get are from people being like, well, I don't want to mess this up. Like that's the core of what they're saying, is I don't want to mess this up. And I get that. I really, really do. I'm not so far removed from being a beginner gardener that I can't remember what that feels like. There's still plenty of times where I feel it in my own garden when I'm trying new things and I don't really know what to expect or what could happen or what could go wrong. But what I always tell people is that you can learn from those failures, right? And so instead of failures, you can reframe them as lessons. And a lesson can be so valuable no matter what the outcome is. Going into seed starting with something like this, I always recommend just taking it day by day, kind of like having Google open. You can always DM me or comment on things and be like, I don't know what's happening. These leaves are turning yellow, and I'll try to help you if I can. Okay, our next variety that we're gonna be sowing today is Romanesco broccoli. Apparently, this is also sometimes called Romanesco cauliflower, and it's sort of like a mix between both, but it has these incredible fractal patterns. It's a lot firmer than even cauliflower is when you cut into it. I've never grown it before. I've seen it in other people's gardens, and I have been green with envy. And so we're fixing that this year, and I'm gonna start trying to grow my own. We'll see how it does. It's supposed to have a mild nutty flavor similar to cauliflower. And the heads only get to be about like 5 to 6 inches across. Any brassica, pretty much, they all like to be just like 1/4 of an inch deep. So I'll like barely make a mark in my seed cells. And I'm gonna do, I don't know this brand, honestly, so I'm gonna do a few more than I normally would for a brand that I know and trust to see how the germination rate is on these, because I don't have a huge window to get these started before it's too cold to kind of move them outside. These ones say late summer for a fall crop, but since I know I have protection that I can add to them if needed, I'm not super worried about them going a little bit later than our first frost date. Now, I'm not gonna tell you not to get starts from the nursery. I do it too. The problem is this time of year, if you're in a cold season climate like I am, the options are really limited, and if we want stuff that's going to really overwinter like late into the fall, then it becomes even more limited. So that's another reason why we need to kind of be thinking about seed starting this time of year, even if you're a little bit hesitant to do it, because the variety is just not there. And if we want to keep growing, which I'm assuming if you're watching this, you do, we have to keep that in mind. Now this one I haven't actually tried transplanting before, so let me know if you've done it and had success, because I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm gonna experiment with it. This is the early white Vienna kohlrabi. I haven't grown kohlrabi since the first year that I garden, and I honestly think that's because I grew it having no idea what to do with it, how to prepare it, how to use it and eat it once I had harvested it. But it's just such a cool, funky, like alien looking plant. So I really want to give it another try. And these are a smaller variety. You pick them when they're about 4 inches across. Kohlrabi is another brassica, I believe. So we do want to put that one about 1/4 inch deep as well. You will find the more seed starting you do, the more you can kind of follow the same formula for different categories of plants. Like, I have never seen a brassica that didn't go in at 1/4 inch deep, because all brassica seeds look the same. You can also kind of do it intuitively based on the size of the seed after a while. Like a bigger seed needs to go deeper. And I think the general rule of thumb is that you put them about twice as deep as the seed is wide. Just cover these up. I'm just having one of those days where I really don't want to get dirt under my fingernails. I know it's so silly. Like as a gardener, I feel like that I shouldn't even admit that, but I don't know. I don't like the feeling of dirt under my nails all the time. I have to be in the right state of mind for that. And if you want me to talk about how to know when to up pot these into like the larger sizes that Bootstrap carries, let me know. We can do a separate video talking about that once these are actually going. I do have these in the deep trays, which most of my trays are not deep. I have these 10-20 trays that are really shallow. And I like a deep tray because you can bottom water way more easily with them. And bottom watering your seed starts is a great way to prevent damping off, which is a huge common issue that beginners have when they're seed starting, is that the surface of the soil gets this kind of like mildewy thing going on with like fungus gnats. So if you can keep the surface of the soil dry and just water from underneath, it builds stronger, deeper root systems. It encourages the plants to grow better. It's just a generally good best practice to have when you're starting seeds. These trays also have air pruning slots on them, and they have the little finger hole that I like so that you can push up and through to pop the seedling out without disturbing the roots quite as much as if you had to like squeeze it or scrape in along the side or something. We're looking for durability here, so I'm going to give you the squeeze test. So these are a little bit more flexible than the other seed starting trays that I use. However, I've seen tests where people like stood on these and they didn't break. So I do trust that they're gonna last me a good long time. Our last variety that we're going to sow in these trays is a purple one. Again, I'm adding as much purple to the garden as I can. I did it in the spring and I'm doing it again in the fall because a lot of times in the cooler seasons, most of what we can grow is either a leafy green, a brassica, or a root crop. And all of these things are green. That's just the way that it is. Like, that's how nature works. So anytime I can add purple, I'm going to do it. So we're adding purple with this Violetta. It's a type of pak choy, which is a smaller version of bok choy that you can kind of pick as a baby leaf or as a full-headed pak choy. So this will add some much needed color to the fall garden. Again, it's another one of our brassicas, so we're gonna do that about a 1/4 inch deep. I'm very excited to try these. I love bok choy. I love to do a stir fry, and I think having like more color, although we'll see if it holds its color when I cook it, will be really nice. Now, I know there's a lot of conversation, and we have talked before about the sustainability aspect of these gardening tools. There's some very vocal gardeners who are very much, you know, zero plastic, and I do understand that to a degree. However, this is an accessibility channel. So we're talking about accessibility today, and I don't think that soil blocking is accessible. It hurts my hand so bad. If all I had was a soil blocker, I would never start a seed in my life. And that's not what we're about. We're here to start seeds in whatever way we can. So if you're looking at starting seeds in plastic seed starting trays, I'm always going to tell you the best way that you can keep it sustainable is to get a seed starting tray that's going to last you a really long time. We're not talking about those flimsy black plastic nursery planters that people are literally discarding the moment that they get them. Like, this is something that can easily be reused. For me, it's still the most sustainable option while still being accessible, and that's what we're all about here. Okay, I have 3 more varieties to tell you about. The first one I don't have because I can't find the seed packet, but it's clementine cauliflower. I'm actually not growing any cauliflower this fall just because it takes up so much space in the garden, and it's really hit or miss for me whether or not it bolts or actually forms a full head. So no cauliflower for me. It forms like a really vibrant, deep orange cauliflower head. I just think it's really unique. Again, we're all about adding more color to the garden. I think it's also called cheddar cauliflower, although that may be a different variety. If it is and you know, please correct me. The last 2 that I have are not going to be sowing in seed trays today because they need to be direct sown. The first option that I have for you really needs to go in the ground right now at the beginning of September. This is a black Spanish radish. This is really unique, extra large, really spicy radish. It's black skinned on the outside and then you cut it open and it's white, but it's very big. The thing about a black Spanish radish is it's what's called a winter radish. So it needs shortening daylight hours and cool temperatures in order to germinate properly. It's not going to do well in the spring or summer because of course summer it's too hot, but even in the spring we're getting increasing daylight hours, so it's just not going to do as well. The other benefit of growing a winter radish is it holds really well in the ground. Like, I put these in last September and I didn't pick them until maybe February or March of the following year. So you can leave them in the ground. It's not that they take that long to mature, they just stay in the ground really well after they mature. And this one's a little bit controversial for me because I don't like beets, but I'm doing a Kyoja beet. This is that kind of candy striped one where you cut it in half and it has like white and red spirals inside. So it's really beautiful. It's actually was developed in an Italian town by the same name back in the 1840s. If we're going to be growing root crops over the winter, I just think it's really nice to have some more color, more variety, more flavor variety. So I'm trying new things, and I don't like beets. So if you have a recipe that you think is going to make me like beets, please link it down below because I'm not convinced. They taste like dirt. Then my final tip for you in order to get these seeds to germinate properly, because that can also be a big struggle as you're starting seeds, is we need to keep the area consistently damp. And the best way to do that is with a humidity dome. These ones also come with the Backyard Gardener bundle from Bootstrap Farmer. They have great vents in the top, which is super important because we do want some air circulation, but this allows you to control that. As soon as your seeds have sprouted, you want to take this off because you do want that airflow to prevent any damping off. That kit is a great intro to seed starting or just kind of to refresh your supplies. If you've got stuff that isn't built to last and you're ready to reset and have things that will last you, I'm going to link the kit down below so you can shop it there. I hope this helps get you started on your seed starting journey, but if you have any questions at all about seed starting, please put them down in the comments below. Make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Thank you so much for gardening with me, and happy growing.